Meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Warren.
Here.
Commissioner Henry.
Here.
Commissioner Jarvis. Here. Commissioner Snyder.
Here.
Chairman Moore.
Here. We always start our meetings with a prayer and pledge allegiance style.
Father, we join together to consider the business of Lapeer County today. We ask your wisdom and guidance as we consider those topics and make our decisions. We ask that you help us whenever we're representing people of this county to be mindful of their needs and their concerns. And we ask that you bless all of us, give us the strength to carry on through all the challenges that we face day to day. Ask all of this in thy name. Amen.
Amen. Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before the board, you'll see today's agenda.
I'd like to add something to the agenda if I could. That is to finish up the discussion on the voting machines. I know people think it's not wise, but we need to have a little discussion. So it's coming up in August, and we still have to discuss it today. So I'd like to add that to that. If that's okay.
Why didn't you bring that back as a item for next week?
I was hoping that a carryover when I saw it. I didn't get interested in looking at it. But,
There isn't any carryover, is it?
well, last week, we did a great job. Teresa did a great job explaining to us about our canvassers. She did a great job explaining to what the clerks their jobs are, and I'm 100% behind that. She also, at the end, during that conversation, she put her hands on the machine and said, the issue is that. And that was an issue, and nobody got to get questions on. Nobody got to mention that last week, so that's why I'm putting it on now. So we can at least talk about that part of the machine. As discussion, that's all we're doing. I have constituents who've been asking about it, so I'm putting it on there.
They're asking you to put it on. You're gonna need to have to add a motion. Put it on.
I'll make a motion to add that.
I'll second.
We have a motion to support. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All same sign. Motion carries. Okay, we're gonna add that to the agenda. So that's voting machines. Put it on. It's number 2, additional items. Do you want Teresa involved in the conversation? Did you ask Teresa to be involved in the
She
conversation?
participated, it was for discussion, but I'd be glad to put that on the motion. Teresa, would you be willing to be a part of that conversation?
Certainly.
Okay, so I'll make that motion to add Teresa to part of that conversation. It's all still a finish up, so. You agree with that? No?
Yeah, I don't think we need to make a motion. It's consensus of the board that that's the way that agenda items move forward.
I appreciate it.
I think the issue was at the end of the meeting, last week's meeting, of course, there were some questions that were asked by the public or whatever, and it was a debate back and forth, so it gives you the opportunity, if there was any questions that were raised that we didn't get a chance to answer. So I guess when we have discussion, we'll be part of that discussion.
That's fine. Did you have conversations with some of the people that were here, Teresa, last week that were gonna call you?
No one spent any length of time with me after last week's meeting. After, I took a fair amount of time in my meeting or anything, but I'm happy to answer or attempt to answer any additional questions.
So no one called you or sent you an email to
No,
talk with you? That's
no, and I had my cards available for anybody to take so they could, direct phone to my main line and so on. And I'm always willing to sit down with people in the lobby or whatever, but nobody did after last week.
Okay, thank you. So we have to approve the agenda.
You did.
And we have to approve the July 15th, 2021 regular board meeting minutes.
I'll move approval of minutes. We've already approved it.
Review of Commissioner Miley's expense sheets, grant applications. What's that?
Support.
Okay, all in favor, same say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Well, Commissioner Miley's expense sheets are going around the dais this morning. Please take a look at them. If you find anything wrong with them, let us know. Elected official department head updates. Any elected officials or department heads like to give us an update this morning? Probably not. See, the only one here is Dave. Oh, Kevin, you want to do that?
Want me to do that now?
Yeah, you can do that. Instead of waiting till public time, but no, you have some places you have to go.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's fair day today, so on my way to Tuscola County when we get down here. But thanks, it's good to be here. Sorry I haven't been here before, or I've been in a while, but you know, when you guys meet Thursday mornings, we have session, and session starts at, the committee started at 8 o'clock in the morning, so it's a little difficult to be here and Lansing at the same time. But I just thought I'd give you a quick kind of a general overview, and I can take questions if you want me to take questions. I'd be glad to do that. Obviously, important to you guys, budget negotiations are ongoing. I can tell you that right now in the budget, it's a 2.1% increase in revenue sharing, which I think should be a good thing for you guys moving forward. Going into another thing that affects county commissioners is the Senate Bill 242, which we did pass out of the Senate and sent it to the House to go to 4-year terms for commissioners, for county commissioners. We'll see where that goes in the House. I've always been an adamant proponent for that. I was approached and asked to sponsor the legislation, but it was sponsored last year by Senator Edmund Broom, and so I went to Edmund Broom, and he wanted to issue it again, so he did, but I was the first co-sponsor on it. So but we did pass it out of the House, or out of the Senate, and it will be taken up in the House. We'll see where it goes from there. Or it should be taken up in the House. The House is where the problem usually is, because there's some concern from House members that you guys could run against them in the midterm elections and not give up your seat here. So
Yeah.
that seems to be where the concern comes in. One of the bills we just passed, that I passed was my bill personally, Senate Bill 155 and 156, were an insulin package. If you haven't heard about that, it's a piece of legislation that allows type 1 diabetics, which are type 1 diabetics are people that are dependent on insulin and have to wear a pump on their side. They had a guy about 3 years ago in Ohio, Kevin Howdy was his name, could not get his insulin. It was a holiday weekend. He broke a bottle of his insulin, couldn't get his insulin, so he rationed what he had, couldn't get to the doctor was out of town, rationed what he had, was not successful, and he died. And so this bill allows, and this bill, by the way, actually was just signed by the governor in the last week, but so made it to the House and the Senate. So it gives a person with type 1 diabetes that has a regular relationship with a pharmacy to go back to that pharmacy and get an emergency insulin filled without the doctor's prescription, and then they'd have to get to the doctor later. So it'll allow that to happen. And so I think it's a really good piece of legislation. Other states are doing the same thing, so it's good stuff. When it comes to Secretary of State, we have a bill my office introduced that would extend the expiration of driver's license and vehicle registrations until September 30th. It would also not allow the Secretary of State to charge fines, fees, late fees for people who are currently going in and they can't get in to get their licenses renewed. And so when they get in late, they're being charged $10, $15 late fees. So it would remove that late fee, and it would also refund the late fees that were charged since this all started. It also would require her to be open to at least minimum of 25 hours a week at every branch, which they do not want to do. This is past the Senate, it's tied up in the House. They're trying to get it through. I'm not sure, I don't think, it hasn't passed out of the House yet. So we'll see what happens with that when we head back on the 1st of September. This doesn't really affect Lapeer County. I've also got a piece of legislation we're working on for wind farms. It could have affected Lapeer County because the taxation of wind farms, mostly in Tuscola County, this happened, were not The taxation was changed after the fact, and so they're not getting that money. So we've been trying to figure out a way to work with the utilities to get that figured out. The counties of Tuscola, several counties, there's an organization called MRAC, who has joined all the counties together involved in this, and they've been fighting to get legislation changed, and we've been trying to just put the pressure on the tax commission to do their job and come up with the answer to the problem and fix it, because there's a lot of money being spent for lawyers and attorneys. And I guess I've got one more property tax relief, Senate Bill 393 that we introduced, which will give businesses of my bill as well a tax credit towards their property taxes. It would be a credit on their income taxes on the amount of property taxes they paid during the pandemic when they were shut down by the government. That went through the House, the Senate was vetoed by the governor. As the regular thing that we're seeing is anything that's pro small business in our communities that we pass through is getting vetoed. So she also vetoed the bill that I had recently to refund money to veterans organizations, or I should say any private organizations that have liquor licenses that were basically shut down and still paying. Mostly it's club licenses like the Legion halls and the VFW halls that have club license are paying sometimes up to $1,000 a year, and weren't allowed to be open last year, and they're still paying that to renew their license. So we wanted them to be given a credit for the coming year. That passed the House and the Senate was vetoed by the governor as well. And so with that, it's kind of what I had to report on, and I'd be glad to take any questions. I guess I know that Rick's going to ask the question and probably wants to talk about the request for an audit. I've always been in favor of a full audit of the election. I think we've got audits going on. At this point in time, the Senate does not have the votes passed to require an audit be done, a full audit done. I know that the Auditor General has been doing an audit. I think Teresa is familiar with that. But now the Secretary of State has requested the Attorney General, as of yesterday, is my understanding, to stop that audit because they don't have the authority, in her opinion, to go out to local municipalities and do audits only at the state level. So I'm sure that's going to be in the news and be heard about where that goes from here. So with that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Really?
So the main thing that I wanted to discuss is our partnership between the state and the county. Is all of this our money and the bigger infrastructure projects, broadband, roads, bridges, things like that our future generations are going to have to pay for that. We want to make sure that is wisely used. Let me start off by asking a question, because I believe our executive director of MAC is coming to also speak before us in the very near future.
Yes, about 2 weeks out.
Is that what it is, 2 weeks out?
Sorry, August 19th, I believe it's that Thursday. Yes, August 19th.
Will you guys still be out?
We go back to session on that following, there must be that following month, Tuesday we go back. Or, no, we go back that week. We were in that week, yes.
So you go back on the 16th?
No, we go back just one day that week, I think, which might be that Thursday.
Yeah. Well, that's.
I have to check the calendar, sure.
So my first part of the.
Because Labor Day is the following Tuesday, right, or Monday?
Labor Day is the first Monday, which will be, there's the 26th, and then, so there's 3 weeks away before Labor Day.
Yeah, but is that the week is that the Monday after this?
The Monday after the 19th is August 23rd. and
Okay, no, we'll still be off session, yeah.
It'll be
We'll
off
go back until right after Labor Day.
after Labor Day. So you're going to be off for 3 more weeks after that.
So my request, you may or may not be able to grant it, we certainly appreciate you coming today. But if you're able to just make that meeting just at the very beginning when Steve is here and gives an overview, because I always, whenever they talk about these significant issues going on, but they're tied to our relationship with the state.
Yeah, sure.
I always think, man, if only we had our state rep in the room, to hear this, or our senator in the room to hear this. So it would give you the opportunity to hear the broader county perspective report. Just as our representative in the Senate, I'd appreciate it if you were here just to be able to hear county's perspective on some of that stuff. And then I know that you guys, like everybody else, assign so many different things to committees that, and you're on various committees, so I don't know if you are on any of the committee that's looking at the different initiatives, but I understand one of the initiatives that MAC has been working closely with both the Senate and the House on is the whole concept of matching funds, which makes perfect sense. If again, we're going to have this tax burden for our future generations, and we all kind of agree as citizens, geez, we've got these significant infrastructure needs, then it makes perfectly good sense that the way things have been done for so many years is probably going to be a part of this. The state or the federal government will kick in X number of dollars on this road project, or for this bridge, or for this broadband initiative, but we need counties to kick in this much, or we need municipalities to kick in this much. So I'm just kind of curious. I know that MAC has been working on that, just from what you see in your role over at the Senate. Your feelings on that? Do you have any thoughts on this?
So they're trying, I guess I don't understand, what are they proposing?
Well, so
I haven't heard
The
anything.
American Recovery Act.
One at a time.
American Recovery Act money.
So
Which we don't really have any, that money is coming directly from the federal government to you guys.
right, so what I'm saying, so the state gets money, the counties get money, the townships get money, and we're all citizens as well as elected officials. The last thing we want to see is everybody working independently. And then on the big stuff where you need everybody to work together because they're big ticket items, nobody has put that together. So my understanding is MAC is working diligently with our representatives at the state level to say, hey, let's put together some type of structure for these big initiatives. I'm curious whether those discussions have reached your level or not, or whether or not they're still tucked away in some committee.
I serve on probably two of the committees that would be talking about that, and we've seen nothing in committee yet, and that is Finance Committee or Local Government Committee, and I'm on both.
I expect.
So I've been not involved in that discussion. I can ask the chairman if they have.
Yeah,
That's
and
what they
again,
do
I
first.
think that would be significant for you to be able to be here when MAC is here, because I'm thinking chances are MAC's going to be talking about that, and then that gives you the opportunity,
Hear what they've got.
right after they're done to pull them aside and go, I've not seen this yet, or it's our opportunity. But it always kind of strikes me that counties are an arm of the state in so many different ways. Policy, programs, whatever get established by the state legislature, and then the funding gets decentralized to counties based on population or things of that nature, and we're expected to then do the implementation stage of it. It seems like sometimes the communications between counties and states is severely lacking, because it seems like whenever counties go to try to talk to the states, they view us as a lobbyist, because you guys are always getting bombarded with lobbyists with special interests. They need this.
So was that date the 19th? Is that what you said?
Yes, August 19th.
Kevin, we have been asked by MAC to supply them with the questions that we want answered before the meeting.
Okay.
Do you want a list of those questions?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Because MAC has asked us to supply them.
Sure, that'd be great.
questions we want to answer.
And if you have any specific question too, that you go, this would be really, from my seat, I'd love to hear Matt answer or speak on this. Just call Quentin or any one of us and go, hey, how about adding this question onto that list?
Yeah, because
I
you
will,
haven't heard it now, you're gonna hear about it when you get back, so it's good for you to be ahead.
Yeah. Well, and I'll get in trouble if I start putting it on my calendar myself, so I will, hopefully I can do it. It looks like I probably can make it, so we'll see. They're not gonna commit completely. Yeah, but I'd love to see the questions in advance. That would be great.
Dial?
Commissioner Schneider's question was actually the same question area that I was going to raise. The state's going to get about $10 billion from the ARP funds. And my understanding is that MAC is trying to get matches, water, sewer, broadband particularly, up to 3.9 billion of that.
And see, the whole thing is tied to, we can't even get the general budget done. So this federal money's been, and you know what, I'm not a big fan of this dumping all we're gonna do, we're dumping all this money out there. I told them up in Bay City, and meeting the city, not the city commissioners, but the city manager and the department heads, that they were talking about how they're gonna spend all this money. And I said, listen, just be careful, because this money is not gonna be there very long, and then it's gonna be gone. And it's not gonna be money that we're gonna be able to replace. I'm really concerned about what's gonna happen to our budgets in the coming years.
I
We
think
can't just dump this kind of money and put our country in this kind of in debt without having payback problems.
I agree with that. We've got we're mortgaging our kids and grandkids' future.
And that's why
which means when we spend this money, and if, people said, well, turn it back to the government. We turn it back to the government, it's going to go back in to be spent by another jurisdiction.
Right.
So not to spend it is probably not a good idea. You hate to spend it, but if you're going to spend it, you better spend it thinking, as Commissioner Snyder's saying,
And
thinking
infrastructure
ahead.
things that are gonna be, they're gonna
And
be
that's
good
where
for
you get to infrastructure, which we can't deny to a large extent we've been putting off. Fixes on old infrastructure or in areas that have developed that haven't kept up. We've got some problems that are gonna hit the next couple of generations. So maybe that's a good area to spend.
Well, that's it. Hey, we just passed a budget to put a whole lot of money, and I'm not gonna spit out the number right now, into bridges across the state of Michigan. So that'll be good for every county in the state. I don't think the governor's gonna sign that, to be honest with you, because she wants to use the money for pet projects and
And under ARP, that's an area we can't match. Roads and bridges are eliminated under ARP funds.
Yeah.
But they probably are going to be part of this new
And the
infrastructure.
biggest thing is what really should be is there should be a plan for what we need broadband across the state. And that's where this money, we ought to be able to work together and do that. And I think that Quentin's been working with some folks on that as well.
And I think that's the idea, that we ought to work together. All levels of jurisdictions could have a state.
Part of the problem is you've got a limited amount of time to spend it, and all we're doing is driving the cost of that up by having all this money dumped in the system at one time. Same thing was happening with roads. Too much money dumped in at once, and all it does is drives the cost up. There's not enough people to do
And I know
it.
I've had.
And you can't, the people that are laid off and getting all this unemployment don't want to go back to work, a lot of them don't, so having trouble, you guys don't want that.
Well, plus the other factor is there are only so many businesses that can do it. And with the demand coming in from lots and lots of sources, they can't handle it, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we talked about that, but we've been having that discussion with our locals to understand that you can't just throw dollars at a problem and then expect, okay, I did my job, problem fixed, because when the dollars trickle down to where we're at, where are all the asphalt companies? Where's all the equipment that they need, broadband? Where's all the companies that are gonna be installing?
And we
those
were
things?
already spending the largest amount of money ever in the state of Michigan on roads.
You can tell, tried to go somewhere.
But I think it's, I think we've been conditioned by John Biscoe, who sat there for over 3 decades. I think we all agreed he was right, that when you get a windfall like this, you never spend it on reoccurring expenses, because that dollar's not gonna be there. If it's one-time revenue, you use it for one-time expenses. So this is our opportunity to say, whether it's our own personal, buildings, or whether it's road, whatever are those big ticket items that are deteriorating, that a future generation is gonna have to pay down the roads. If we have this one-time dollars, that's where we should use it. And so again, we know in Lapeer County, our big ticket items are our roads, our bridges, our broadband, things of that nature. People are gonna wanna start having us spend it on all kinds of programs, but then programs are reoccurring, but the dollars are not.
Thank you for not doing what was it, Shiawassee County? That did what they did with the money, which was criminal, really.
Yeah.
Absolutely criminal. We shouldn't, I didn't think that was allowed in the program, but, yeah.
It's
Well, it's
allowed,
written.
but it's,
That's not allowed.
I didn't think so. But they did it anyway, so.
What can I tell you?
But anyways, regarding that partnership, I'd appreciate it if,
Part of the issue we got is the fact that we don't, we're becoming a society of no laws. When you've got a Secretary of State that won't allow you to get your license plates renewed, what do you see? I mean, I drive back and forth 85 miles one way every day. We leave the number of cars on the road without license plates on them right now. The police can't do anything about it. The best one I saw was the guy that had a piece of paper over top of it covered with plastic that said, licensed by, what was it, August, he had a scheduled appointment in August, so he had permitted by August appointment on 6/8, so, yeah, and he had none for his license. But it's craziness, so it's, what's going on across our whole country is just sad, what I see. I think probably most everybody in this room would agree with that. When it comes to some of the unfunding police and that type of stuff, thank God we live in Lapeer County, that's not gonna happen here.
That's for sure. We can help it, it won't.
So you get.
What's your thoughts on what you're seeing right now with the budget? You said, you guys haven't even got to these dollars yet because you're dealing with the budget. Is that a toxic relationship right now that's gonna take it down to the 11th hour?
We're dealing, my guess would be yes, probably. The governor was putting out yesterday that we need to get back to Lansing and settle this thing, and she is not, it's just it's a toxic environment there, and I don't want this to turn into a bash the governor day, but unfortunately the governor doesn't meet with us. She has her departments now, and I had a meeting. If you read in the paper, I'm working really hard on the BEAT program, which is an agricultural program, environmental program, a really good program. I don't know, but we're not going to get that renewed because we won't go and make a demand that it become a paid event. Farmers have to pay to get in it, and you're going to be required to meet these things. And it's a voluntary program, and it works very well. And it's working to bring farmers on board, and it's taken 10, 15 years to get their respect for it. And yet the department sat there, and even the department is divided. But the governor won't talk to us, but it's pretty obvious that the new people that she's brought on board do not want this program to exist in its current form. And there's no way we're going to pass something that requires it to be, farmers are already paying for it. They're paying for it through fees. So there's fees that we pay $1 a ton for every piece of every bit of fertilizer we put on. The companies pay $150 per chemical fee each year into it. So that dollars all goes in to help fund it. And there are some state dollars that go in as well. So that's the problem we're dealing with. I'll tell you, I've never had a face-to-face, I've never had a discussion with the governor face-to-face. I've seen her at 3 meetings in 2.5 years. Two of those were her state of the state addresses. And the other one was at one meeting in Bay City that she was at with some farmers up there. But the difference between her and Rick Snyder, because I was there with Rick Snyder, I was there with Jennifer Granholm as well. But Rick Snyder, in my mind, did it the best, and that was he had regular meetings with legislators, lunch meetings, invite 3 or 4 legislators to come in and sit down in the Capitol in the conference room and have a box lunch with him, and he had nothing on the agenda. You can talk about anything you want to talk about. That's the way it ought to be. Whether you agree or disagree, at least you can have a discussion. We don't get that. And that's just factual information, so I don't want to.
Kevin's got some appointments this morning, he has to leave, so.
I got a couple of questions on beyond that. Kevin said I was going to ask about it, and I will, but first of all, I want to say thank you for the diabetic medicine thing. I think it's a great thing. I would like to see a lot of medicines done that same way because pharmacists know a lot about their medications and they know the same people and their conditions. Sometimes, especially the elderly, forget on other medicines that it would be good for them to allow their physicians to give them that 30-day time before they get back to their doctor. I mean, you just think it would be a natural thing to happen, but they've taken a lot of rights away from doctors and stuff. So I'd like to see it go beyond just the diabetics, which is a good thing that we're doing at least that. Okay. But yeah, you did talk about, I am talking about the machines, and you know I was going to talk about the machines. I've mentioned it to you many times and mentioned it to everybody. What Teresa came in last week, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. She gave an excellent job on how the canvassers are and clerks and what their jobs are, their duties are. But the state and federal regulations, they got to follow, or they can go to jail if they don't do those procedures properly. But yet we have a machine that's in question. And you just got through saying that she said there was no reason for that to be brought forward, and you guys can't pass a bill to bring this audit forward. When you got, and I signed affidavits that Lansing's not even going to listen to have them do an audit on those machines, and it's over 10,000 of them that were sent to Lansing, and they wouldn't even look at them. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution of 1963 allows the people to have that. So it didn't matter. We're asking for that. Okay? So we need to see an audit because my contention has been, always will be, that the machines need to follow the same regulations that the state and federal put on our clerks. And that means they should have 22 months untouched. 22 months for us to do an investigation inside to see how the internal workings work. Because none of them know how the internal workings of the machine work. I don't. There's nobody on this board smart enough to know that. But if that's controlling our country and we don't know it or we're not even looking into it, then we have some serious issues. Every one of us needs to question that. We can say, well, we're working on it, they won't make it pass. Everybody needs to take a stand for this country right now. I mean, you're seeing inflation take off, you're seeing people coming from this board, and people don't like to hear all this stuff, but it's out on the news. It's every day. My constituents ask me, some of my people say, well, I never heard anything. Well, I'm hearing it. They're asking me. But not only that, even if they didn't ask me, as a person in the United States, I have the freedom to ask those same questions. And every one of you do too. We should be concerned with what's happening. So when we say, well, then, the governor's not going to pass it, if I get to that, I really don't care what the governor's going to do, because she's not going to listen to anybody anyway. But if we all took a stand and we said, wait a minute, you're a farmer. I don't know nothing about farming. I mean, I worked on a farm as a kid, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. So if I'm going to have a question, we'll come to you to find out. We should be demanding that we go. See, the problem is the vendors that are in the machines. The programming, the software. They didn't put the software in. It's done by a vendor, and we're not questioning the vendors. We're not putting them under the same scrutiny that everybody else is. These people are feeling bad because they did something wrong, and they didn't. So our leaders need to stand up. Every one of us. Every one of us. I don't care if you're a township supervisor or if you're a commissioner. We're all leaders for this community. We're the closest thing to the community, so they're asking us. That's why I'm bringing it here. I can't change that policy. But I can tell you, if we all demand this gets done, Arizona's getting ready to release the information. They still won't even give up the key to that box. That's like me saying to Teresa, I want these records, and she refuses and locks them in the door. You'd take her off to jail. But we're not doing that for these machines, to these vendors. That's appalling. That's where I'm at. So I didn't understand my question to you. It's actually trying to pass this to get it through, and they're not even listening to people. They're not even going.
Well, trust me, Rick, they saw the 10,000, people understand. There's 10 million people in the state. 10,000
No, I understand.
is a large number, but it's
Nothing.
it's nothing in the 10 million people in the state, right?
This could be
But
one.
the investigation that was done by the state Senate, by Senator Ed McBroom from the UP. Senator Ed McBroom is a good man, good, honest, sincere man. He wanted to find a reason to do an audit. I guarantee you, he wanted to find a reason. He could not find a reason.
What's the reason back?
He looked into every single thing that was put in front of him. And I've got to respect that at this point in time. I still think an audit would be a good thing to do, and I told them right at the end. And trust me, Arizona is being watched very closely. I told you this before. There's communications between the state Senate in Michigan and Arizona on a daily basis about what they're finding there. Arizona election was a lot closer. I'm not sure if Arizona, one thing we do in Michigan, which we would, I mean, there's no way. I mean, if we lose this ballot going back in that box, so we have ability to count a ballot, a written ballot, we've lost it. If it goes all electronic, that's a bad news. But I worked on these elections I was on the election commission in Arcadia Township for 20 of the 24 years I was on the township board. I watched those machines come into play. I know how they go through the test decks and they go through and they check them. There was never any internet connected to the ones I've ever dealt with. And I know that there's stories that there was internet cables connected to the machines in Detroit, and the committee reviewed that and said they could find no evidence of that. And I know Pat Colbeck tells everybody he saw them in person, but I don't know what they were connected to. But from everything that they've been able to find in our committee, they did not have internet cables connected to them.
And I'm confused with that because I would have been downtown Detroit, but I had COVID at the time. The reason I wasn't down there. My friends were down there, just not Pat Colbeck. I just heard Pat Colbeck talk about it.
My chief of staff, Amanda Wright, who lives in Metamora, was there that night until 4 o'clock in the morning. And she did not like what she saw when the ballots were wheeled in. And she didn't like that. But they were wheeled in. Apparently they had been to the chain of custody had not been watched like it should have been. And that's all stuff that needs to be fixed. You can take every one of those votes that were in that group and take them out, it doesn't change the election. That's where the problem comes in. Ruth Johnson, who's a state senator too, who's former Secretary of State, says there's always cheating that goes on in elections. We need to get some of those fixed, and we've looked the other way for a lot of different years. They need to be fixed so it can't go any farther, but it won't, from what they tell me, being on those committees and serving on those committees, it's not gonna change the tally of this vote in this election. Well, that doesn't mean Arizona or Pennsylvania or the ones that were a lot closer, it could make a difference. And we're watching those closely. So.
Well, I'm just gonna say,
But we gotta get, the reason why I support a full audit, my concern is a full audit I should make a difference if you're Republican, a Democrat, Green Party, or what. A full audit, outside audit, not done by any elected official, should settle the problem. I don't think it would.
well, I think
You could do a full audit, and if they don't find something wrong, I don't think you're gonna change some people's minds.
here's what happened all across the country. You watch it, I watched it. Everything's looking good all night, 10 o'clock at night. We're looking at it, watching Trump winning like crazy all over the country, all over. They didn't want to call it because they said it was too early. And then less than an hour after Arizona opens, they called it for Biden. And people all of a sudden, they're like, what the heck just happened if you called that early? So all the questions went. No matter what the outcome comes out, because I agree with you, whether Democrat, Independent, Republican, it doesn't matter. We're talking about freedom here. We're talking about our rights to vote and be counted. When I say then those machines just say might not prove anything. If it proves that Biden won, I've always been a person, whoever the most votes score, that's what I'm going to support. I'm a big boy. But not to say, just nothing to see here, we're not going to go any farther because we don't think it happened. Well, I don't care what you think. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about what did the machines really do?
That report
Yes
does
or
not
no?
say we're not gonna go any farther.
No, I'm not saying, I'm not
Okay.
accusing you. Don't make,
Okay, yeah.
when I'm talking right now, I'm just talking, this is what the people out there are upset about.
Right.
This is what people are saying, hey, watch it, you don't divide us because it'll be worse. People are upset because they're tired of hearing that same, well, we're gonna investigate, This audit should have been done already. It should have been day one. And what's happening, we got 150 people sitting in DC right now, and nobody's talking about it because the media won't talk about it, that are in prison. I'm talking about grandmas and grandpas. I'm talking about young people that never had an issue in their life. And now they're getting treated worse than give them. And nobody's talking about it. We don't arrest anybody that took over our county buildings, our police station. We just wash that away, and nobody's talking about it. This is not something we can play with. This is serious, serious business. Because within a couple of years, Kevin, I don't know if I told you, but my personal friend who runs my house down in Florida came from Argentina. You know what? They're citizens now. They came 25 years ago. You know why they came here? Because the same thing happened to them. They're scared right now. Local people are scared. And we're hearing this. So all they have to do to solve that problem is to force an audit today. And now we got people that are out until the next, going back till the first week of September. But this should have been already done. But in 22 months, I'm saying.
And I think I told you this before, but I'm gonna tell the whole group too, the situation we're in also, this is over and above this, and I know I've told you this before, is that if you do an audit, it's not a cheap process.
Understand.
Costs a lot of money. So we don't have the governor's office. We don't have the attorney general's office. The attorney general is the legislature's lawyer. That's our enforcement. So if we want to do anything without the support of the attorney general, we gotta pay outside attorneys. To do something like this, you've got to have some really good attorneys. To pay outside attorneys, we've got to appropriate money. Who has to sign the appropriation? The governor. Puts us in a terrible, terrible position. People will tell me, well, then just go collect money from organizations. So do you believe that we're going to get anybody to believe an audit that's paid for by people that are supportive of this audit? No way in a million years. I mean, that's the problem we've got.
I can tell you what they would rather see. You take this art money and take care of that before you put it onto something else. And the people will be very, very happy and supportive. And we could tell her to go kiss whatever.
We'd love to do that. We'd love to do that, but the governor has to sign off on that
But
again.
she doesn't. But if there's enough, I took an oath of office.
Well, don't qualify to do that.
I took an oath of office to defend this country, both foreign and domestic, against tyranny. When you are running a machine, and possibly, we don't know that, but let's just say it is, because if it is, then we're running that scenario. We don't want that scenario. But we want proof that that's not happening. We need that proof. But I understand it's expensive, but it's expensive for everything else we're doing. This is something that's going to control the rest of this future for this country, for your children, your grandchildren. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, somebody should poo-poo what I just said. Like, freedom to me is the most important thing we can have, and we need to stand up for that right now.
I find it hard to believe that anybody in this room would disagree with
And
that.
I know you're not fighting on that, Kevin, that's not the issue, that's not what we're at. We're talking about, we have to somehow figure out how to get this done, because they took, this last 30 days, I don't know if you're aware of it, but they took batteries out of our machines. All of a sudden become an issue, the batteries, they never mentioned before, but now it's batteries, they took them out and said, but you didn't need them, it's not, there's software in there. There's stuff on that battery. If I took my battery out of my computer, I have that URL part up there, when I type in, I got a history, I can see what I did. But as soon as I do remove everything, that history is gone. I can't go back and check on it. They got to keep the balance for 22 months. But we could erase the history because it's no big deal, because we're not connected to the internet. But we had to take, somehow report it to the state, to the national, to know whatever numbers were. How did that happen? How did it not go electronic somehow? Did it all go by paper? Because I know it didn't. These are the questions we need answered. And that's where it's at. Sorry, and I finally took care of our agenda for number 2.
Yeah, you sure did. Thanks for coming, Kevin. I know you got a couple of, anybody else have any questions for Kevin?
I was hoping the sheriff was here.
He's over at the fair. They're busy today.
He has some concerns, and I didn't bring my notes. Lenny, maybe you can help me when he was talking about his different issues with how it was going to affect the sheriff. Because I don't have the bill numbers or that. Excuse me. They weren't going to be able to get police officers because they weren't the immunity.
Oh, yeah, the,
Qualified immunity.
Yes, the
Qualified
qualified
immunity,
immunity,
absolutely.
that's what it was called.
and there's proposals out there right now. There's no way you're gonna see that get through the legislature. So, yeah, that's why Scott and I had a discussion about that. I had a discussion with the police in Bay County and Tuscola County, same thing.
Okay,
But, yeah, there is, even our Attorney General, believe it or not, came out in support of the police, so, which was a good thing, so, yeah. I don't believe qualified immunity is anything to be concerned about. I mean, we're watching it close and need to be concerned, but I don't think you're gonna see anything happen.
That same area, got a report that binding arbitration for the corrections officers passed the House, and it's now in the Senate.
I don't know for sure, I haven't heard that yet, but
And that would be a concern for counties, a great concern, because we already are facing binding arbitration with our deputies. And it's police correction, I don't know if it includes 911 or not. I would hope you.
I can ask the chair of that committee what he knows about it, so, absolutely. That it?
Appreciate your time. I
Okay.
understand. I'm not beating on you, Kevin.
I'm sure I'll be talking to you again.
I'm sure. But I gotta say this much in support of Kevin. I've talked to a lot of people. The only one I see respond to your phone calls always has been Kevin Daly. So we tip our hat to you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any more elected officials or department heads that'd like to give us an update this morning? Dave, got anything for us? Okay, I'll close elected official and department head updates. That brings us down to first public time. Anybody like to address this board during the first public time?
Carolyn. Yes, I have notes all over this paper, so please bear with me. My first comment is about the forensic audit. It may not change this election, but it may change the procedures for the next one. So that's why I support it. Also, the new procedures that are the old procedures at the front door, I was just wondering who put those procedures in place? Who is behind?
We did.
Okay.
The health department still has a say in what we do here. The health department recommended that we put the old procedures back in place.
Okay, so the health department did,
The health department.
not you. I mean, they, okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, we actually follow what the health department, the guidance from the health department.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Someone should not govern by being a tyrant. It is lack of confidence in someone's leadership roles that they convince through fear that others do as they command. We have heard personal negative consequences, personal stories from these therapies that they are calling vaccines. I believe there are some people in this country that want us sick, they want us fat, and they want us sedentary. I will not comply with that. It is another way to control people. A lot of money to be made through the pharmaceuticals. As a farmer/gardener, I can choose to use chemically produced herbicides or pesticides, or I can use truly natural ingredients and procedures to produce healthy food, and I choose the latter. My body, again, my choice. We need to be spending some of these dollars that are that you guys are that's being appropriated for healthy living in our community. Everybody keeps saying we need to start at the local level. That is absolutely true, and I'm pretty proud of Lapeer County and some of the things they've done. But I believe that some of the extra dollars need to be spent on healthy living, exercise, clean food, and community connection. Just as some people are at the fairs today. And my last comment is, I think the terms of 2 years for county commissioners is sufficient because the evaluation of voting by the public is a good thing. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to address this board during the first public time? Mr. Boss, how are you this morning?
I'm wonderful. How about yourself? Just a real quick follow-up. We talked about the ARP funding, and I don't know, you guys deal with it from the MAC standpoint. I'll tell you from the MTA standpoint, as you're well aware, the cities and the counties get their money directly from the feds. The townships, with the exception of the 8 entitled townships that have populations in excess of 50,000, goes through the state of Michigan. And the MTA has done a wonderful job, as far as I'm concerned, to try to get the 1,800 plus townships in the state to apply for and do that. It's going to be interesting to see how many actually did. The cutoff, the application deadline was the 27th of this month. You have until 2024 to come up with your projects, your different things, and then 2026 to complete them. But you had to have that paperwork filed by the 27th of July, or you're barred from. It's all well and good. As you know, it's a convoluted mess as to what we can spend it on, and this is allowable, that's not, that's still in the works. You've got to put your name in the hat, so to speak. So I did that. I consider myself somewhat organized on these things, and it still was about a 3-hour process for me. And I'm concerned that townships that don't even have a full-time hall, they operate out of their homes, and the state's procedure for downloading and uploading. We talked about the broadband issues and how much of a mess that was. But what did surprise me was when you log on to that, you're given 3 options. Option 1 is to fill out all these and put your name in the hat to collect these funds that are supposedly allocated for you. Option 3 is to go ahead and complete all of these forms, but you are not going to claim any of these monies, but you wish that those monies allocated for your township be redirected to the local municipalities, other townships. Option 2 was if you don't do anything, if you don't fill these out, or if you do fill out the form for option 2, which as of the 26th of this month still was not available. That's pretty telling when the deadline is the 27th. Then all of the monies that were allocated for your municipality revert back to the state of Michigan for their general fund. I, the conspiracy theorist, said months ago that they're giving $533,000 to Elba Township with, we don't know what it can be spent on. I said all along that they're giving these monies, that their plan is to reallocate them to Detroit's and Saginaw's and et cetera, for whatever their pet projects are. I think that was pretty telling of what that was. You have to have your top of the line budget numbers for whatever reason. I logged onto the system all prepared. I tried to get as much done ahead of time. I logged on, I found out that they wanted to know what your top of the line budget item was as of January 27th of 2020. That's that's hard to go back then and figure out where we were at on January 27th. By the guidelines here, the supervisor is the one who's responsible for doing this. I had to create my own account because the supervisor, I can tell you, never logs on to the state of Michigan treasury prior to. I can also say as a supervisor, we're not the ones who deal with what the budget is on January 27th. So it entailed me working with the clerk, the treasurer, and everything else. Just want to give you a little bit of a perspective from a township standpoint. I think that you're going to find that the overwhelming majority of the 1,800 left this money on the table, and it's going to be going back to Lansing for whatever.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else want to address this board? I think we're still in the first public time. Hearing and seeing no one, I close the first public time. Brings us down to first agenda item, which is Sheriff's Department request to replace active and reconstruction equipment and software paid from the drug forfeiture funds.
I'll move it.
No support.
You weren't here last week.
Right.
With an explanation.
So it was on the agenda, okay, but not this item. Or,
Yeah, this item was on the committee of the whole last week.
but it wasn't part of one of the motions.
It was, he needed to follow up with an official RFA, which he did include. The motion was number,
It came forward as an agenda item this week so that the language could be provided for the motion.
that was it.
Yeah, okay.
That was it. So the request for action, it was a
They were
motion, we
supposed to
needed to
provide
develop it. Correct.
There was no written motion last week.
So the draft motion is what they're providing.
That's what it was. There was no-
That's what it boils down to. They didn't have a motion that they needed at the time.
So we moved, we're ready to move it forward, but it was a classic example of trying to construct a draft motion, and that's a lot of burden on the clerk, so we just simply asked them, could you please commit what we just all discussed to a draft motion?
Are we satisfied with the draft motion based on that discussion?
We discussed it, it was just to get that final verbiage, so that's what this is.
Yes.
We're
Now,
supposed to supply that.
what they did not have,
Who's
they
supposed
did
to
not have an
supply
official
that?
request for
The Sheriff's
action.
Department's supposed to supply that.
and then it's supplied at the bottom. So everything that's been reflected in the packet under item 1, this has been added now, our official county request for action,
Okay.
and the motion as written is what needs to be approved on.
Okay. Understand. Thank you.
Okay, got a motion and support. All in favor of approving the motion?
Good question. I assume they got requisite number of bids, or was this single source?
Also,
Sole
Single
source.
source? Probably state.
the state that,
That answers my question.
There's also conversation about the drug money and things like that. So that's been drawn down considerably with this. It's drawn down from 50,000 down to what, 18,000 or something going forward. You know, the state changed the rules on drug forfeiture, so we're drawing down enough before too late. So we got a motion and support. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carries. I don't know, Rick.
Wait, there's one question on the machine with Teresa. Because I found out the machines that are being on the election, because election is August 3rd, which is coming up pretty quick. But the machines that are set up for that did not get their batteries removed, is that correct?
If I can,
The machines, on the voting machines for the August 3rd election, I understand those batteries were not removed for those because of August 3rd, they're under lockdown.
I wouldn't be able to say one way or another because the whole question of the batteries to the people that aren't involved in our industry, that has to do with the preventative maintenance.
Right.
To make sure the machine are gonna work properly at the election. So I would have to ask Hadley Township, because that's the jurisdiction that has the August election.
That's what I heard, it was understand, so they didn't do the
I
maintenance
presume
because of that.
Their preventative maintenance was taken care of, because that's key to make sure all that equipment continues to work and continues to be covered under warranty. But I can ask the clerk.
Yeah,
and then get back
the form that wasn't done because of the fact it was already in lock and key, which was
Well,
good, but I'd like to know that.
If I could share again, my knowledge about the question of the battery, that one that I was told was removed during preventative maintenance had to do with the ICX, which is the ballot marking device. It doesn't do anything more than help. It's a voter assist terminal, VAT, voter assist terminal. Don't use the terms handicap because that's discriminatory, but it basically is a piece of equipment to help someone if they need aid in voting, if they need to plug in and have the ballot read to them. It has even a puffer device if they don't have the ability to touch the screen, so they can puff their vote. Do a lot of people use that in Lapeer County? I don't think so, but that's part of the new generation equipment to allow transparent use by people who might have a need for extra help to vote with their ballot.
Okay, so you're talking about that machine, the big machine.
Talking about, this was the freestanding
That little
touch screen, yeah, the touch screen. So,
The only ones who are using that touchscreen are them, or does everybody use that?
no, everybody likes it because we're in a touch society. So, it actually helps process voters on busy elections because you have maybe me, I like writing a paper, I like doing my oval in the privacy booth. Well, then there's a whole line of voters, so then there's other people that can go use that touch screen terminal to also vote their ballot. And the good thing about having use of both types of voting styles is that then if I am of an individual that needs extra assistance, I'm not singled out. I'm not the one over here using the touch screen because I have some need or a lack of ability to in another way. So I'm not singled out if there's a whole stream of people using the touch screen while the rest of us are using the privacy booth. So that's the whole attitude about that touch screen. Again, it marks the ballot, just like the auto mark did. I don't know if you all recall that from the last generation of the equipment. It was huge, noisy, but it would be where an individual could take a seat and have that piece of equipment mark their ballot for them. And the problem throughout the state was if somebody used that auto mark, everybody in the room knew they were handicapped. We don't use that term. And so this new voter assist terminal, the industry, it's an ICX. ICX is an acronym for whatever. Helps take away any of that, oh, they're handicapped, they gotta sit over there. So that's one of the whole reasons for that touch screen. We funnel people to it. The younger voters love it because they're always touching their phone. So and anything we can do to encourage voting is a positive thing in my mind.
Okay, and the
So
machine-
just to answer the question about the battery, I got off track here. So the batteries in the voting equipment is to electrical power in case the electrical goes down. So the ICX electrical battery was removed because they found a glitch with the battery and the electrical power plug. The ICX touchscreen also needs an over-the-counter printer. So in the case that we would lose electricity, in the case that jurisdiction does not have a backup battery, that whole voting opportunity wouldn't be available anyway because the printer's not gonna work. Office Depot over-the-counter HP printers don't have backup batteries to run juice, you know? So it wasn't a negative to take out that electrical backup battery in the ICX. To my knowledge, the backup battery on that larger unit the ICP that actually counts all the ballots were not removed, but I can't say that for a fact. I will look into that. Because again, that backup battery is for electrical power.
But I'm glad to clarify, my next question is how did those things get down to that box with the other ballots? And you're telling me it's those chips that are coming off of there going in. So that everything lines up with the ballots, paper ballots, and the ones that are on the touch machine. So they go.
Yeah,
So as long as they didn't remove those batteries?
Back to the voter assist terminal.
Yeah.
When you touch mark your ballot, over-the-counter printer prints a ballot that has a summary of your votes. It also has a URL code. So you are correct, those small flash drives that I showed you that are programmed with that jurisdiction's ballot style that are in the tabulator, which counts all ballots, it's able to count that URL and count my vote that I did on the touchscreen. So we want all voted ballots to go through the ICP, the tabulator, so that when we finish the election, close the polls at the end of the day, our totals match.
Right.
Our total number of ballots
I understand that.
cast out, people that are in the poll book, because there's all kinds of requirements for balancing when we process elections, so.
Yeah, and then as I mentioned with Senator Daley, I mean, we were talking about stuff that would not be on there as far as, like you said, their URLs go into a computer so they can be read someplace. That's what that's for. So that means that somewhere down the line will be involved with the computer to get to someplace. So these are the issues that are beyond, wish we had IT guys here like we did last week, because we don't
Well,
understand all that part of it.
The flash cards
Mhm.
are what identifies that precinct's ballot. And they are programmed to read any ballot, either the one that's on that VAT, that voter assist terminal, or the long ballot that you and I take into the booth and fill in the ovals with our pen, with our hand, with our.
Okay.
So the flash drive is the key piece of what makes that tabulator read ballots and that tabulator to create that total statement at the end of the night. So the programming of that card is what's key for that equipment to understand what it's supposed to read for that precinct. Realize that those cards throughout the county, they're different everywhere because you have different candidates. In our large election presidential cycle, all elected offices are on the ballot. So Alva Township, their card is different than Oregon Township because there's different township officials. So, and there's different commission districts. So each program card is particular to that precinct and they are designed in such a manner that if somebody accidentally gets into the wrong precinct or tries to feed the wrong precinct ballot, the tabulator won't allow it because it's not reading the material, it's not understanding what's on the ballot because it would be maybe the wrong precinct. So if you have Alva Township, for instance, they run all three of their precincts, it's a large township, in their hall, it's really packed with equipment. So it's important for the workers to funnel the voters to the right area and so on. I'm too much detail, sorry.
We got, but I tried to clarify that part of it. There's still those questions that I think everybody's good now, knowing a little bit about where that's at.
Okay.
I don't know that everybody's happy with that outside part.
Okay. Well, it's important for everybody to understand the integrity of the equipment, of the election, of the workers, all the checks and balances. It's critical for people to understand that. And I am sad that somewhere in Michigan or somewhere in the United States of America, somebody is convincing good people to distrust our process when we have in Michigan paper ballots that back everything up. Everything. My marked ballot, you don't know it's mine because my identifying number's off it. And that's part of our freedom that I can vote and nobody will know my vote. We have all of those in our hand to prove the integrity of what we do.
Yeah, and I tip my hat, I mean, you guys did a hell of a great job. You guys are awesome. So after reflection on any of our people, that's what the country had issues with, and reasons here in Michigan as well as everywhere else, whether it was honest or not, is that they saw a lie. They saw a lie, a spike during the night that completely flipped it. And everybody wants to know why. Because of a paper ballot? Because of a machine? How did it flip so much? How come there was so much of a spike in the middle of the night? That's what people want to know.
I can tell you my answer for that.
We would like to hear that. Everybody,
My
that's what people are looking for.
perception
Yeah.
is, all of the AV ballots, absent voter ballots, in large jurisdictions are handled at counting centers, okay? In our county, many of our jurisdictions are developing AV counting boards. So those folded up AV ballots are being run consecutively in a sequestered room while you and I are in the open precinct voting. So we're having election processing going on during election day. Realize that all ballots, AV, are good right up to 8 p.m. on election day. So you might have citizens who aren't turning their AV ballots in until 7:59 p.m. Their ballot counts. So in many of our jurisdictions, all of that is processed in a sequestered room. Those people can't even leave that room because they're in active voting, they're seeing votes. So that's what happens here in Lapeer County. In our precincts that don't have that separate AV county board, those precincts are weaving in AV ballots during the day. That's one of the reasons that I didn't get my last township in until 4 a.m. the next day in November. So take a big place where there's a lot of precincts, big cities. The AV ballots are done at a counting center. So my perception is that these are delivered to the AV counting center all during the day, and then they have to wait until 8 p.m. out here in Sterling Heights, out here in Berkeley, out here in Hazel Park, or wherever else. No, those are probably all country. Wherever Detroit is. Detroit's the big thing, right? Detroit, Wayne County. So they have a landmass, a lot of citizens. So they've got to gather those AV ballots in from all across their jurisdiction, but not until after 8 o'clock at night, because citizens, I don't know why, but they wait. They wait to turn in their AV ballots sometimes. So they have to wait for all those to come in. Then they have to chain of custody. I hear that a lot. Chain of custody. It's under rule, under law. Was I there to see what they did? No, but I know what that is supposed to be. So they gather those in, they travel to a counting center. I'm presuming Cobo Hall, or whatever you call it, was their counting. I'm presuming that. So you're getting deliveries in well after 8 o'clock. And there was a big push in this election cycle for people to register to vote and, of course, and to vote AV. Add in a pandemic where nobody wanted to leave their house, all that AV voting spiked the AV ballots. And so that's my perception. However, there are voted ballots to prove what the vote was, but I can only give you my perception of what happened.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time. You're done with that. That's a great explanation.
Any other questions? Anytime you want to call me, come in. Happy to talk about it, happy to show you what we do.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Well, draft motions. You know what I don't see here, Quentin? I don't see the motions that came out of the committee
I'll be right
last week. And there's someplace. You know, we had motions that came out last week.
I think what will happen is it'll go through the next committee of the whole. Because we had our meeting after the committee of the whole, so those
I
motions.
understand that. I just wondered.
That's why.
All right, Lenny.
Okay, back page of the agenda are three draft motions from last week's committee of the whole. Mr. Chairman, I just have one question for administration on number 2. So you want me to just move 1 and 3 or do you want?
Now go ahead and ask your question.
So on motion 2, that was the one motion that we had a split vote by the board. And we were all in agreement with the motion as far as the whole process, the reasoning, the whole concern on the split vote had to do with the date. Some of us wanted to have a little bit more advanced notice for departments. Some of us said, no, August 1st could be lived with. so I just have a quick question for you, and Dave, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot as a department head. Dave, have you heard from any department heads, any concerns since last week before we vote on this? And Dave, do you have any concerns as far as a department head goes, that all of a sudden now you have to be responsible for scanning all your documents, or do you need time to catch up to speed? I'll ask Quentin first.
So met with the court, specifically circuit, and so they had machines that were operating, but they needed just to make sure that they had enough machines. We finalized that. That was good to go. We brought in Mike Bartley to contact those departments that had concerns about, is there indexing properly? Because we can scan anything we want to a flash drive at any given time. That really doesn't matter for the purpose of servicing the departments. What they need is the index created on the software. So when the page goes through, it's indexed properly. So when they go back to retrieve that information, last name, date of birth, record of action, whatever else, that's done appropriately. So Mike Bartley was notified. He said, we have covered that with departments, so they are good. They need a refresher if they're uncomfortable, specifically at the courts, they need a refresher. I said, Mike, when will you be in so we can have these discussions? He will be here August 2nd, which is a Monday, August 1st, obviously Sunday, August 2nd, and he has scheduled on the docket to meet with department heads to ensure that they are comfortable with everything that they need. So that's been covered. Some departments have, I don't mean to put Dave on the spot. We have not spoken or had a conversation since our last meeting. So if there is something that would come up, I mean, I'm surely we can address it. We still anticipate on working more closely with departments that carry a lot of public record, courts, health department, for sure. Finance, and I mean by that by like HR personnel files, because we do come and have a lot of documents there. They have the priority because they have the most documents. We need to get that squared away. And then animal control, I would go to the extent of saying, register of deeds has quite a bit too. Trying to think off the top of my head. Equalization, for example, they share with the treasurer's office, but they have a very small portion of the files that they need to ensure that they're taken care of, probably a little bit later down the road because they don't have the volume. But no, left that meeting last week. Department heads, a message was sent out. Mike Bartley on the technical side was contacted, and there's a plan in place to ensure that everybody has what they need when they need it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Basically, Doreen sent out an email to all of us last week after the meeting, and I answered that right away. But I guess we're fortunate. We don't really generate a lot. I mean, I guess I would have the few employees I have that information could get scanned in. We have our own program for animal control that pretty much everything we do, even if we write a ticket or something like that, is entered as a complaint or in our own system. So we generate very little. We do have a scanner already at the office if we need to put something in, but basically everything goes in our program, the shelter program that we currently use. So I really, when I was trying to answer Doreen's questions from Quentin, I was trying to think of some other things that.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Dave, but just the volume out of animal control, if there was an issue, if we come up and say, hey, this is not what we'll catch up a lot quicker with animal control than under the volume.
Well, I thought his operation was a classic example, not a whole lot of paper, but not a lot of people. And then the health department is an example of a lot of paper, and they're already stressed. Can they handle it? And then I know
Clerk as well.
Teresa's here as far as keeper of the records. Do you have any concerns?
Well, I do. A question more than, and a concern, I suppose. We have many, many vital records, and the scanning suggestion, of course, is good, but we need an official retrieval process too. And I've looked into that over the years, and I'm ready to do that again and bring it to the board, because it seems to me that could be a great union for us to preserve our vital records. We're creating certified copies all day long, and to be able to do that in an efficient manner and also preserve those paper records. I mean, the vault area in my office is filled with records back to the 1800s. Critical records, birth, death, marriage, election records, and so on. So
I would, and perhaps that's a discussion Quentin and I have to sit down and have about the correct way to go forward, because in my mind, scanning is one thing. It might be different if you're doing invoices or licenses versus myself with being able to retrieve and create certified copies. So I would like that to be a unified matter at this point in time.
Well, I guess my other question to you is, we're all in agreement on this board with the administration that this has to be done. So my only question to you is it a problem at all when we say it has to be done starting next week? Or, is it preferable to push that date out a month or two for certain preparation if preparation is needed?
Yes, you're very astute. It's going to take some time to really, in my department, to look into this, to go forward in the correct manner. What I heard at the meeting last week, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that no more records into the storage building across the parking lot. That came across loud and clear, and I'm good with that. It's just we have a number of things. I mean, board-related matters, the minutes, the exhibits, and so on, critical for retention, critical for retrieval. That's the record of the policies of the county. So, and that's all in our office as keeper of the records. I said to Lynette the other day, we were working on another matter. I mean, we have a whole different set of record keeping for the courts, for restitution, and so on. So I said, we have a huge obligation to save these records, and then also now to be able to retrieve them, because it's one thing to scan them, but if you can't retrieve them when you need them in our setting, it's futile. So.
Well, I'm comfortable in hearing that Bartley is on board and that at least there's going to be this communication component, very short order between him and all the department heads to meet their needs.
And what our goal is to force everybody to get to that stage. So that's what we know we're gonna have, everything's gonna have to be worked out now. But
So I'm
this is really
happy
good.
that I'll be given some time for that conversation and really to drill down and do it right. Basics is what I want. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I got my questions answered. So with that, I will move three motions from last week. Motions 1, 2, and 3.
Support. We have a motion and support for the draft motions. All in favor of those, signify by.
And two tonight. So you're comfortable with people being able to meet that August
I was
1st?
gonna say, last week I was thinking as a department head, and I was not comfortable that they would be, but the fact that there's been no rush to quit the store over the past week, that there has been communications, that even the departments that have to move forward and would prefer some preparation time, it sounds like there's no major panic there, that they're going to be given the support in short order to make sure. So with that in mind, I don't want to obstruct administration's attempt to move this forward.
We have to make sure that all the departments, there's going to be a time frame here to do the different departments, because we have to make sure they have the proper equipment to do this. So it's not like telling every department on, but we had to have a cutoff date because we can't allow any more records to go into that building over there. So that cutoff date was in there for a reason. We're working on all the equipment, right? Make sure everybody has this right proper scanning equipment and is able to process everything. And
Files, setting up the proper files, sounds important, so you can get it back.
first thing we're going to work on is your office.
Good. Yeah.
Do I get extra help?
There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts, and just like a good project manager, you just take one piece at a time.
Right.
We'll lay a good organization down to know what we have to do when, and then we'll communicate openly with the departments. I really like what Ms. Spencer had to say about, listen, we have, we're setting the cutoff line for August 1st, and that's really for moving forward, but she has records going back to 1800s. So there's also a preservation within those, those historical documents that we also need to take into account. Some documents, once they go in the scanner, it's easily retrieved. You don't have to have the physical copy anymore. It's there. But for an 1800 record, we want to keep them. You know what I mean? I mean, they need to be kept and archived. So there's a whole piece on that as well.
For the history, yes.
Exactly, and for the physical history,
We still use them. That all sounds real well and good.
Yes.
I've been to the clerk's office. I have a cemetery that goes back to the 1800s, and it was through their office that I'm able to identify the person that I didn't know was there.
and so preservation is a piece of this as well.
Very important, yes.
All bases will be covered.
I understand that we've had that conversation, just trying to work through it. Okay, so we have a motion and support now. Okay, Dial. That's what we have here.
I think we're gonna work with people as we can.
We will.
We get it going.
It'll be done. So all in favor of this motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oh, same sign, motion carries. So we've got the ad hoc committee updates. We don't have one from Art yet. So is there any other ones? I don't think so. You got any more information from Amy Sells?
Are we going to, well, I guess I was gonna, under reports, make sure that all of the commissioners had gotten their surveys and knew that today was the last day of the request to get them turned in.
Turn around and there again.
Hope it wasn't last Thursday.
What's that?
Oh, was it last Thursday? Right after the whole department debacle. Great. Never doing evaluation on the board meeting.
So hopefully we're moving ahead with that.
I just thought it was kind of odd, he has quitting to be involved in that and actually make a greater review on himself involved in that.
That's not a bad idea.
I
His
so now.
perception of himself matches everybody else's. I think that's sort of a neat
Yeah.
concept.
Okay. Guess there's no updates other than that. Fiscal planning, budget discussions, you've got your tentative calendar in front of you.
Thank you for that.
Is everybody okay with that? The budget process?
Yeah, there's just, when we start having our hearings, if we can do it later in the month, I know we won't know how many we need. But I've got to be planning in Detroit. Monday and Tuesday. For doctor's appointments. And if I change them, it's gonna be 6 months before.
So don't change your doctor's appointment. It's hard enough to get doctor's appointments.
It is.
Well, it looks like we got a little bit of wiggle room with the way the dates were laid out, which I think that's
Sure.
pretty good. You know, originally 13th and 17th, we've got a full week after that, so I think as it gets closer, we would.
Of course, Emma and Jackie are working this all out for us.
In the past, we were able to fit that into basically a day or a day and a half.
Right.
Maybe I don't know quite how we're conducting them this year, because we haven't really discussed that in any depth. But I guess I can say I'm available that week, but I'm not available the next. Because I assume that
We went
was the
through a
week.
process 2 years ago that actually required them all to bring revenues in and also expenditures.
And I don't know if we're doing that again or not. We haven't really discussed it.
Well, we went through it last time, and we came down to the final day. As you all remember, you gave them everything that they asked for. Remember that? It was like a candy cane. It was.
Yeah.
It was exactly true.
That's not my recollection either.
What did you give them?
Oh, we definitely have,
I talked to you 2 years ago.
18 years and I've never seen us give everything that was asked, ever.
We
gave
gave
a
more
lot.
than you like, I'm sure, but
Right.
Right.
Some years you've been stingier than others.
And we weren't that year. Okay, so moving on. So we have that calendar. We'll wait until next week, to put this on this application for appointment. We'll run that through the committee of the whole next week. We also have, well, we need to pay the bills, I guess.
Certainly. I will move the road commission's audit motion in front of us and the county's audit motion with the controller's signature.
Support.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
Commissioner Henning,
Yes.
Commissioner Jarvis,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Yes.
Chairman Warren.
Yes. It's been $2,489,652.97. Hard-earned taxpayer dollars this morning. I'll bring this down to the second public time. Anybody like to speak to the board during the second public time? Hearing and seeing no one, I close the second public time. Any of the commissioners have anything to report this morning, meetings they've attended, or whatever?
I'm kind of, report on a little bit, with Mike BOC here, he can kind of contest to this, but I went to the meeting the other night in Elba Township, and COVID-19 kind of created a lot of expenses for a lot of different things, but I was kind of, I have septic tanks at home, so that wasn't an issue to me, but I found out that they raised their sewage bill because COVID kind of increased a lot of people using those sanitary wipes and clogging up all the systems and creating other problems, so it made another expense. So just be aware of that. Not a big thing, a little tidbit I found that you don't even think about how COVID can affect our community, but that was another way it had to. So that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Just one housekeeping bit of order. So one of the statutory boards that I sit on, I-69, that's Michigan Development Corporation. We always have paperwork that we have to fill out for our board and for the state. And they require from both the county's representative and from an alternate. We did make an alternate, Mr. Chairman, on this. I've never needed an alternate. I'm always at that meeting and sit on a couple of different committees on that meeting, just for procedure purposes.
Now you need an alternate?
Well, we need to, and I've asked Dial in the past, he's been on paper as an alternate, and this year with the appointments, we don't have one, and Don said, yeah, go ahead and put me down and give me the paper to sign, so if you would just formally, you're the chairman, if you would formally appoint Dial as my alternate.
You got something for me to sign?
No, I have something for us to sign, and it attests to the fact that Dial was appointed as an alternate. So,
You gonna have any questions for him, or just?
well, like I said,
Right now.
yeah, it really is a hard board to be an alternate for, because it'd be hard to just walk into Flint with all the other municipalities and be able to, that's why I don't put that burden on anybody else. So it's, like I say, it's just more a housekeeping.
And that's fine. I know that you've always been the one I appoint to those committees. So I can also just, up there at the top, just.
Check him off as alternate.
Check him off as an alternate. Kind of like we do at Michigan Works. Now that they're serving those good breakfasts, I don't think Rick and I will miss anything.
Oh, yes, yes. By the way, we get nothing over there.
Nice place to hear that.
I know you don't.
This community is well taken care of.
Just as a bit, I heard Michigan Works, I should mention that Michigan Works Association as a whole statewide has received, the new CEO is Ryan Hunt. Ryan Hunt is the former COO of the MEDC. So he's leaving that post in economic development and moving over into Michigan Works. Ryan's a friend of mine. We've worked professionally now, going half a decade or whatnot. So I know Jody and he are going to be working together pretty closely. But if nothing else, if there's an opportunity, he has mentioned he will come locally to say hello. So if that is something of interest, I can reach out to Ryan.
That's great. When did he take over this?
Last week.
So,
A couple things. One would be our funds know there was a comment about possibly using it for things like organic food. Again, the art funds have such strict requirements for certain things and not other things that we don't totally understand, but the categories are pretty clear. That wouldn't be one, I'm sure, that would fit. But we are open to ideas that do fit as we go through that process. I also wanted, I think I mentioned the state had 10 billion. I checked that out online, and I think I'm in error. The total for the state, including local
It's 100
governments.
million, isn't it?
No, I think it's 10 billion, but it's, I think 5 billion and 5.5 billion for the state, plus the local jurisdictions. Just for our, that's my understanding. Wouldn't say that I'm wrong, I could be.
The federal government actually did not want to put this money through the states because the states always want to tap onto it, always want to collect a fee for it, and so that's why
It's not like they're not directing lots of other money through the state,
Oh, lots of it.
but in terms of art, I think they've limited. Back regional training, I wanted just to comment briefly. Training was okay. I was going especially for the art session, and that was very disappointing. One thing was focused on the fact that we can get consultants that will help us with things like reporting, evaluation, accounting. I'm not sure that we have that need. We'll find out, but they are there on a retainer basis. I know the one that made the presentation, Guidehouse, indicated they had as current clients Livingston County, which is comparable, fairly comparable to us. Also Oakland and Wayne, which aren't. But, that's a possibility. I guess we can always hold that in reserve if we get snowed under. And those of us that have had to deal with federal paperwork, reports, and valuations know that it is a mountain, and you can get snowed. And they're not very forgiving or you don't do it on time. And I did mention that particularly that MAC through Dina and the other staff are working on lobbying for the counties to have roughly a 3.9 million match from the state. And again, I think it's primarily water, sewer, and broadband, but could include some other areas. There are other funds, as she quickly pointed out, not just the ARPA funds. I think the other thing that maybe I'd highlight is that something I hadn't heard was that there is discussion in the legislature for moving the primary from August next year to the first or the third Tuesday in June, which will change the election schedule, campaign schedule greatly. But the other impact that she pointed out would be if we have any millages that are coming up that we need to renew, we need to have that done a lot earlier. We're used to that May time frame. That's going to push away into March.
And that was gonna be my question. It's gonna affect everything from candidates to issues, all of the ballot language, it can't get in ahead of time and stuff like that. So did they say where this proposal is at in,
Is it out of committee?
She didn't get into that much detail. Just it was important enough to her.
they'll make a decision on it pretty soon, it's not going to.
Yeah.
It's either not gonna have time to, or if it does, boy, that would suddenly,
It's tough on villages
Yeah.
and things to get
Yeah.
the wording properly.
I was-
Especially with capture.
yeah, I almost thought that issue got, pushed by the wayside, we haven't heard anything for a while now, I was just starting to hear it.
Yeah, as of this last Thursday, it was still something that she thought was possible enough. She mentioned it in her report.
That's a question that we've got, not coming.
On the 19th.
That's what I'm going to ask us, what's
That'll
the,
be,
Election sector.
what's the status on that?
Sorry, Teresa, we're trying to put more pressure on you, it sounds like.
I can just make a comment, couple that, if they make that change, coupled with what we don't know that's gonna happen with the reapportionment.
Yeah.
Oh my,
Yeah.
oh my, I already have 5 candidates who have filed for state rep position for 2022 with the, parentheses is this might not be your district.
Yeah, right.
So add that, and I already have lots of calls about what's the filing deadline. So unless they would make a wholesale change, it's gonna back everything up with those 13, 20 weeks, whatever. So yeah, I need to make a couple calls when I get upstairs.
It's got the phone right away.
To see just what the thought is and if that's gonna go anywhere, so thanks for bringing that up. I also thought it went by the wayside, so I wasn't worried about that. The reapportionment and watching that, whatever that happens, that one happens on the consensus.
Splitting the state is still an issue that may happen. I mean, not the state, I mean the county.
Nobody really, I don't know. I don't have any knowledge of what that citizen committee is doing. I know there have been meetings, but
Bill Ballinger that spoke at the Republican Party, and I was not aware of this. He said of the 83 counties, Lapeer County is the only county that the borders of the county is the borders of that House district. Every other of the 82 has some type of
split. And it's
split.
beautiful because it really cuts the election costs down because of ballot programming and splitting the precincts and so on. And it's great because whoever is our representative represents all of us.
And it's not finalized, because I went to one of the meetings about a month and a half ago, so I'm hearing you say that. And the question was that they're talking about splitting and taking Alva, Columbiaville, Hadley, all the way across, putting that towards Tennessee and us towards the other side towards St. Clair. So that was the version I heard. So you just said that, so I'm glad to hear you say that stayed intact. But I don't think it's finalized yet.
Right.
Keep your eyes open.
I don't think it's out in the public at all.
Not yet, not yet. Those are just all the conversations.
Suppositions.
Does anybody else in this room, except myself, because of my age, remember when it was split?
Yes.
Well, I'm sure you do remember when it was split. Does anybody else remember when it was actually split?
Yeah.
When half the county had one state rep, the other half the county had another state rep. That went on for quite a while.
Sounds like it might come back.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a problem,
That is.
especially when you start talking about drain districts and every other thing that goes in. That was a bad issue. When Karen was around, she was a state rep. Well, half of us.
Just for that, right? Anybody concerned, you might want to try out michigan.gov/MICRC, or you can go to Michigan-mapping, MAPPING.org, and on there you can kind of help do your own mapping, I guess, so you can kind of figure it out. But if you want to find out information on it, I would tell you to check that. That's the only thing I can tell you.
Mr. Chairman, 2 other things to report on. One is I have to meet up with Terry Jostock, Road Commission. He wanted me to make sure to extend an invitation to all the board of commissioners to come to their meetings. He said there's a lot of discussion going on these days. And they're now meeting every other Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Well, that was one thing I said I would make sure the board is aware of that. And then the final thing, David has talked about and showed me and given me a copy of the policies and procedures manual for his department that he's working on. And I wondered what we're doing with that. Are we bringing that to the board, or is that something to be dealt with departmentally? I'm not sure if other commissioners were aware of that, or I was the only one that got a copy.
I got a
Well,
copy.
I have copies for everyone if they want them, but I gave it to you, the picture of the policy.
As a procedure.
Animal control has never had standard operating procedures over there, and I've done them. And So I didn't, if you guys wanted to look at them, I didn't know if an attorney needed to see them or a witness got a copy. It was more informational, and if you want to meet on it, have questions, fine, if not, you know, so be it, but I've never had them, and I've done them, and so I figured you guys should at least be aware of them.
I've got a copy too, so we gave them to you and I.
You're generally.
A lot of that detail is such that I'm not sure we want to look at it at this level, but
No, I think just every
Do we
commissioner should
approve
get a copy of it as an FYI. So like you say, if we have any questions or just for educational purposes, but otherwise it doesn't need to go through the policy committee because that's pretty much just for our policies.
I did have one recommendation now that we're going to be adding additional safety equipment to their, to all the safety officers. What was it, chief? Excuse me. I'm including tasers, and there's necessary training that goes along with that, that it would be appropriate to move that into general legal counsel, just to look over it, make sure that we're not missing anything. Now safety is more of an issue more than ever. So we're looking at that just at a deeper level. It needs to be, I think we should have it scrubbed by our general legal counsel before it actually goes into, into effect.
Well, Scott would be a good pair of eyes too, because rather than reinventing the wheel, it's pretty common to just have animal control when it comes to those type of liability issues. If they mirror what the sheriff's department's doing, not only does that, whatever established process they have over there meet state guidelines, but would also be consistent with our risk management.
Dave, I think you did bring a lot of that information over.
Can I speak for 100%? Lenny, I did speak with MMRMA, to talk to them a little bit about it for one. And I also, like, in any of the policies that I've done in regards to tasers or pepper spray or anything like that, I reference like whatever training the sheriff's department has, like, and I will say, there's handgun policy in there because I didn't know if that was going to happen. If now we can pull it out, but if it does, it says that we must follow and be certified through MCOLS, and then MCOLS is a 7-step process that is very, very regimented. That but I referenced that in my policies that it goes, that's what our officers would have to be trained on, which is what the sheriff's department does. And the same with taser and that sort of thing. So everything is referenced in there. And I do have copies for, I gave them to the others because we have been meeting in properties about certain things. So I wanted them to have it, but I have copies for the rest of you too, and I can supply you with a copy for council or whoever you want to see it. So.
Yep. Good, thanks, Dave.
It's one of those topics we normally, there are a lot of departments that have sort of policy and procedure manuals that we don't approve. We do. I think recently did the alcohol and information manual, approved that, but we're the department, health department board now because there is no board. So I assume it gained us for that reason. So I guess,
and there might
I don't
have
want to
been
hang David
things-
up, but
There may have been things when we were through the health department, there may have been things that way, but since we're our own entity, and I had nothing to give any employees as to these are our standard operating procedures and how we do things. And so that's why I basically.
yeah, I think it's an excellent idea. It's a question of what level does the board, administration,
That's totally up to
others
you
get
guys.
involved.
I just want to make sure that, you know that I have them. So.
Yep, thank you.
Do one more?
That's it.
I think you had 3.
Two.
Okay.
Well, it's the end of the month, and I don't have any meetings the end of the month except the fire association.
I understand. Next week at the committee of the whole, want to bring up what Lyndon Dial's been talking about as far as the historic courthouse. And after thinking about this whole deal with the historic courthouse, probably charging the people that are trying to raise money a fee to use the historic courthouse, or trying to raise money for the historic courthouse, seems to be seems to be a little out of place. So what we need to do is we need to change that. Just for certain groups, not for the world, but just for certain groups, and that doesn't, there's no logic to that, is there?
Well, and it's a little demotivating to the volunteers that are trying to raise the money.
Well, that's fine, that's why I thought we'd bring it up, maybe the whole, put it on that agenda. Well, I have a question,
Okay.
and maybe this will help Mr. Bosky too.
Mhm.
You know, our finance department has been working very, very hard on this process of this ARP money. And we have helped a lot of townships, things, and helped them file for that money. I don't know if you're aware of that, but we've done a lot of them. And so that's available through the county. I mean, we will help you with anything you need because we pretty much processed all that already, the finance department has. So that's just something that you should be aware of, all of you. Because I think we've already done it for several townships.
Yes.
My understanding was
Villages.
that we would assist them, but we don't actually do it for them.
No, correct. We provide the technical assistance. They have to fill out the application. They need to gather signatures.
Right.
This is something good. Maybe Mike, we'll jump in together in a conversation, but the MTA may have providing supplemental material for tracking purposes, but we have created ARP expense tracking forms that would allow somebody to say not only did the account as a draw from, but the rationale on why we would spend the money the way we did. So it's a document generated by the county that says it comes out of this account for the reason why, and it matches to the eligible expense written into the internal final rule. So if anybody were to call us out and say, why'd you buy this? Why'd you spend money on this? Why'd you just, well, we did it because it matches the eligibility right here on this section, and it covers us there, regardless of what the federal government tells us, because you know what they're going to do. They're going to create 10 extra hoops that you're going to have to jump through. But at the end of the day, we want a single source document that says we're covered based on these reasons, and we'll share all those. We'll share all that, and we'll do it in Excel so it can be name changes, account number changes, those types of things. But we're happy to help in that way.
Something else you and I had a conversation about was you set up in Clifford, we have, when it comes to broadband,
Mm-hmm.
we have all kinds of cable up there, is that right?
I was under the impression that when Rochester Gear was operating, as part of their operation, they needed high-speed internet in order for their automation systems.
Yes, they did.
According to the ISD, and Chuck Madden separately from the ISD, when we looked at a fiber map, it blew my mind when I looked at it to see how much fiber. For folks who don't know, what fiber really does is it creates a very fast pathway for transmission of data, especially for internet connections, to be serviced to homes and or to commercial buildings. Rochester Gear being the employer for Clifford, it was very important that they had high-speed internet. Under what I understood to be true was Clifford does have quite a bit of fiber under the ground, and also what's considered dark fiber. Dark fiber is the redundancy that it puts fiber in the ground, it's not tapped into, it's not even used. It's for future uses. It's like when you build a road, you don't build a 2-lane road when you think in 50 years you're gonna grow in population, you need 3 lanes. So you put in extra, that's called dark fiber. It's my impression that we have that fiber capability in Clifford right now.
So would you do me a favor when you get time? I know you're very busy. Why don't you call Chuck Madden and see what it would take actually to use that fiber, to run that fiber from North Branch, from the library, all the way up Jefferson, up to Clifford. Don't understand why it's not being used.
Will do.
Because if we have that much fiber up there, we should be using it.
Just wanted to thank administration. They did, and we talked about it at the board level, them sending out a notice to the townships, reminding them about the deadline and assistance. And I think, Doreen and BF sent that out. I'm sure our townships appreciated that. It'd be interesting to see the extent to which our townships in this county have taken advantage of that.
Did you call your townships like I did mine?
They did not. I sort of counted on that message going out.
Well, we always have,
And I had talked to two of them.
we have Mike here every meeting.
I had 2 meetings, I think, where I mentioned that.
Well, the
Mike
credit,
went on vacation for a while, so we missed a few meetings. Whatever.
credit does go to the finance department for setting the groundwork by
That's for
applying early.
That's for sure.
It is true that they set the groundwork. Finance department did an excellent job. So we learned the hard way through there, which made it easier for others to follow. So credit does go to the finance department.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else? For the good of the county? Meeting's adjourned. Thanks everybody for attending.